Hi there, traders. This is Brad Gilbert with the FX Market Insight for the 15th, Tuesday, the 15th of June. Right now, a bit of a pre-London European Open call here. So just to give you a bit of an update, we're lacking general direction here across the board. If you're looking for equities for an answer, US equities up slightly. Is that trickling through into the currencies? Not so much. We're really lacking some economic data to give the currencies momentum. If you look at the US bonds, price slightly up, which means the yield slightly lower, and commodities, not a hell of a lot to sort of talk about there, although copper is off 2.3%. That's actually a decent move. All right, now let's just focus on what's happening with the dollar, right? You can see the dollar index popping topside. So we've got some action topside, but now see how this thing has just stalled and drifting sideways. That's because, we've seen the initial move. Now we're sort of just stuck here like, okay, we've moved. We've got a little bit of dollar strength, but is it going anywhere? Not so quick, right? And you look at the major currency pairs. I've updated my charts here. Now, Metastock have got a new charting system out. If you search for up the top here, financial charts, you'll come to these new charts that they're going to be using. Now, these are trading view charts. They're pretty functional as far as what you can do with them. So that's what I've got here at the moment. So just, you see the dollar move, right? It's popped. Like dollar Swiss doesn't really want to go above 90, the figure at the moment, until we get more info. Dollar yen's cruising to the top side with a dollar move. Now, dollar CAD has gone up, but is now sort of stalling and drifting. Check out oil, right? So 71 bucks. That's going to put downward pressure on oil. Dollar CAD. So just be aware of that. Now, nice clean move once again. You don't get cleaner than that through that support line around 121.45.50, right? If anything, right now, and this is where you got to go. I know we've seen a lot of these moves stall, but right at the moment, we've got, I think, US retail sales, industrial production, a few of the numbers coming out Wednesday, Thursday. But at the moment, you've got to be looking to sell euro on rallies. It's a clean break to the downside. It's sort of drifting in no man's land at the moment, but it does look primed for another crack at the downside. I know I've said it 100 times, but we need the US numbers to come out strong to give us that move. If they don't, well, then you know what? There's a chance for just a retraction or retracement, I should say, back into the range if we do get weak US numbers middle of the week. Sterling, it's just been sort of grinding away in a big range, right? It's sort of just cruising. It's still got that affiliation with the whole rollout of the vaccines in the UK. I don't know how long that can last, but it's lasted a long time. Now, the Aussie and Kiwi, these pairs, I was saying this a couple of weeks ago, they were looking really fatigued and heavy, trading heavy, which means every time they try and bounce, they don't really go anywhere. Now, they do look primed for a break to the downside. I think that's the key here, right, is euro, right? It's the big dollar block pair. It's going to be in control. Like sterling's doing its own thing somewhat, but I think Aussie and Kiwi will follow the euro if the euro can get some momentum to the downside. Top side, well, dollar index is already broken. Dollar Swiss is a good chance if we get strong US numbers, and dollar yen still likes the top side as well. I think the big one to just be aware of is dollar CAD, right? It wants to go higher with the dollar, but oil moving higher is going to put downward pressure on it. So I don't know if that's a good one to be sort of ripping into at this point. All right, so that's where we are. Now, let me just give you a bit of a look at the calendar here, right? So as I was saying, focus on where the key events are, like UK employment today, worth having a look at, right? I don't think there's a big affiliation. We haven't got the clear direction from the Bank of England yet regarding what's going to happen if inflation or employment goes nuts. So that's why these things aren't reacting too well. But I tell you what, Bank of Canada, RBNZ, Fed, so the Kiwi, dollar CAD, or Canadian dollar, and the US dollar, they're the ones to focus on, because the central banks are giving us intel on what they're going to do if certain things happen in the numbers. Actually, sorry, the 15th. So yeah, we've got the US retail sales figures coming out today. You've also got industrial production numbers, capacity utilization. Now, these are probably second tier numbers, but they all build a case New York Fed manufacturing, to find out what's underlying, what's happening in the US economy. All these numbers come out strong. We are going to start to see that consistent dollar rally, right? And vice versa. If we get all these weak, well, then we just drift back into the range. So that's where we are right at the moment. You got to focus on these numbers. Hopefully they give us some sort of direction. And if you just scroll down through your calendar, you can see obviously it's a big week for sterling. Employment today, tomorrow, you get CPI, RPI, and I think it's usually a triple whammy. Let me come down here. Is there any more sterling stuff? Oh yeah, retail sales on the 18th, right? So we do have a number of things, but then once again, we've got Aussie employment numbers, very big factor. The Fed, obviously, huge, and Bank of Canada inflation numbers. So we've got plenty to play for. Sort of Wednesday onwards, it's really going to get busy. Today, we do have a good lead in with those US retail sales figures, industrial production, etc. As I mentioned, now watch these numbers. We are looking for momentum to come back into the market, right? Strong numbers. I would expect probably equities to fall, right? The dollar block to fall, US dollar to rally. It's got to be the way of it, right? So just keep an eye on that as we go forward. The dollar index isn't probably the best pair to be looking at if it's rallying because it's already moved. So come over to your other pairs, find the ones that haven't really moved yet, and get into those easy entries around those trend lines. All right, guys, that's it. All the best from me. I guess I should actually one other thing if I just come back. So I just I've updated a couple of templates here. So just having a look here, I've just got a currency relative strength monitor here, right? So you can see here, it's an easy one to see. Now, each currency is the base currency. So some of them I've flipped them over depending on which way they're quoted. So you can see here that US dollar going down at the moment on this Asian day, but look at this, hardly moving. Actually, if anything, they've hardly moved at all. So just down at the moment, but dollar yen, very little movement, but down. Aussie also in the red, but I tell you what, you would hardly write home about it. Just having a look at the equity markets. Well, there's not a lot happening today. If anything, with that slight US equities up, okay, up on the day here, US equity futures. It's giving a little bit of a reprieve here to the Asian equities. You'd expect that to filter through into the European equities. That's where we are there. Bonds, okay. A bunch of those European bonds, Canadian bonds and Japanese bonds, price slightly lower, yield a little bit higher. Not really impacting at this point, but something to keep an eye on as we go through the day. If you want to have a look through the whole global bonds, it's a good way to just to see how the bond market is working with specific currencies. Okay, the Euro bonds a little bit lower, but once again, not a hell of a lot of interest at the moment. Right. So just factor that in. If you start to see like a sea of red, it's worth having a look. But then once you take a look and if you find they haven't hardly moved, well, it's not going to really have a major impact. Anyway, guys, there's a few things to look at. We'll see how the week pans out. It's going to start today in the North American session. Wednesday is going to be busy, and hopefully we get some clear direction from the upcoming data. All right, chaps, have a good one and all the very best. Cheerio.